We live in color, emotional beings. From moment to moment, it can change.
I've noticed a lot of times, you mentioned foundations. So many times, nonprofit organizations have their basis in some sort of personal tragedy or experience, and the person or persons that are involved in starting that foundation or nonprofit are looking for a positive way, not only to help themselves move forward, but they understand from the humanitarian standpoint that it's not just them, that other people have experienced and will continue to experience similar emotions and similar setbacks. So in trying to help themselves as well as help others, I think it doesn't, how can I put this? It doesn't eliminate the necessity of the grieving process. That is something I've run into people who have managed to stave that off for years, but sooner or later, they have to deal with it. Sooner or later, it catches up. Mm-hmm. And I find that really, really interesting. But when you're working with starting to launch something, you are in more of that cognitive mindset, which means that emotional grieving component, at least temporarily, is put on hold so that you can shift your focus into some sort of positive action.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And, the grieving process it's going to happen whether you want it to or not. And we try to, if it doesn't grab a hold of us right away, it depends on how we're wired. Some people, the grieving process, it just kind of snatches them and they grieve and they don't have a choice in the matter.
Right.
Some of us have this delayed reaction to grieving. And if you are that type of person, that means you can make a choice. Do I grieve now? Or do I talk myself into believing that, I can just skip all of that and move to the heal phase, right? So for those of us, and I'll just speak personally, I have a very delayed reaction to grieving. Something catastrophic can happen in my life. And it's almost like I go and dig a really deep hole really quickly in my head and just hurry and dig that hole and then bury it real fast and put all the dirt on it and go, okay, I can keep moving. Mm-hmm. That is what I have learned is that is a very unhealthy and unwise approach to grief. Mm-hmm. The grieving process is something that you need to sit in, that you need to sit in so that you're not waiting 5 years down the road to start this process. Some things hurt and they will always hurt. They will never not hurt. But 5 years, if you start the grieving process right then, you will be in a very different space in 5 years. I think a lot of us delay grieving and we act like adversity doesn't exist.
Mhm.
And so because of that, we choose unhealthy and unwise strategies to deal with grieving or adversity, which will always get you in the end in some shape, form, or fashion.
Absolutely. Um, a lot of times we're comfortable when we're in that um, cognitive aspect of our lives, and it actually becomes a coping mechanism. I find myself sometimes saying, I don't have time for this. It's going to have to wait. When this is over, I probably deserve that nervous breakdown and I will have it, but it's going to have to wait until I get to it on my to-do list.
Yes.
This is usually not a good idea because sooner or later, inadvertently, it's going to catch up. And it's not always a choice. Sometimes it'll just sort of arrive in a most inconvenient time when it might have been better to allow yourself to start the process and go into that emotional aspect where it's not happy, it's not comfortable. We really don't want to do this, but it's an integral part of this entire process.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. And professionals and performers, all those of us that have to, perform, which that's all of us, to be honest with you. But in a high stakes performance profession, it is very difficult. We are the professionals when it comes to sitting something off to the side. I don't have time for that. I have a show. I don't have time for that. I have an episode to record. I don't have time for that. I have classes to teach. I don't, all of these, you talk yourself into not dealing with the emotions, the raw emotions that you are feeling. And some of us become more hurt. Some of us do more damage to ourselves. Some of us become angry. I mean, just all of these domino effect type situations because of not dealing with properly something that happened 2, 3, 4, 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, that's going to pull up eventually. Like people that you would not really want in your house, and they're coming with a bunch of baggage. They're just going to pull up one day. That's how grieving or, all of these things that we don't deal with immediately are. It just pulls up one day. It doesn't make an announcement. It doesn't call and say, hey, do you mind if we come and crash with you for a while? It just pulls up one day with a boatload of baggage in the trunk because you did not sit in that and deal with that at the time that the initial event or loss or, whatever happened. You decided to try to work through it. Oh, I'm a professional at working through things. I'm just going to work through it. I'm just going to get really busy, or I'm not going to allot myself the needed time to really face what I'm dealing with head on.
And one of the things I've noticed, and I do it myself, a colleague pointed it out, in the process, emotions can be bouncing all over the place. Mm-hmm. And you will be what I call okay, you've got control.
Right.
Let's put it that way. And then all of a sudden, something will trigger an emotion. And I hate to say lose it, but let's just say the tears begin. And, you're somewhere and it's unexpected, seemingly inappropriate because people around you are not really aware of what it is that just happened.
Yes.
And you apologize.
Mm-hmm.
And my colleague pointed out to me on a couple of occasions that you don't have to apologize, even if it's kind of an inconvenient response. This is your emotion. You own it. You're entitled to it. And you shouldn't really have to go around apologizing or explaining it. So this adversity and grieving process is certainly not based on convenience.
Most definitely. I remember I lost both of my parents in 2018, 2 weeks apart.
Oh, dear.
And, oh my God.
Oh, I can't imagine.
The immense amount of pain. And then on top of that, there was family quarrels, and it was so much to deal with that I just didn't. Because having a loss is one thing. Having two losses, which both are your parents, is another thing. When you're fighting with your siblings over the most, I can't even explain. I just can't even explain. I felt like I was so hurt that, have you ever heard the terminology, all cried out? Like I felt like my soul couldn't hurt anymore. And then something had happened right before my parents started declining that was earth-shattering enough. I hadn't even dealt with that yet. And so it was like earth-shattering experience. Parents both decline quickly. Parents move in with me. Parents pass away 2 weeks apart. Utterly devastation does not seem like a strong enough word. Okay. I did not deal with any of this. I just kept going on, just kept moving, and I was in a conference in I want to say it was like the end of 2020, and the person that was up, the speaker that was up said something that was completely unrelated to anything in my life. And I started bawling uncontrolled in the middle of this conference, and I'm on like the second row. And I'm pretty sure they have film and footage and pictures of this lady. Like, what is wrong with this lady? I could not stop crying. I was embarrassed. I was overwhelmed and overtaken with emotion that had not come out. It was almost like a pressure cooker that someone just left and then take the top off, and the pressure it was so immense that it just blew the top off. And I literally cried for 30 minutes uncontrollably in this ladies' conference. What an embarrassment. I was so embarrassed. And I can laugh now. I was so embarrassed because I was sitting in a place where everybody in this room could see me. And I'm pretty sure people were like, that's a weird place why is she crying? That was just a weird place to start crying, but it was because all of this grief and pain that I had been carrying for years decided to come out at the wrong time, literally. I think that we don't talk about pain and adversity and grieving enough because it's uncomfortable.
Exactly.
We want to talk about happiness and joy and great feelings and positivity. I am Queen Positivity. I wholeheartedly understand that. However, there is a reality that adversity and loss and grief will come. So to talk about it is empowering, because to talk about it is to establish strategies to deal with it when it does come. And because, in the human experience, it's coming. It's a matter of when, not if. It's a matter of when.
Absolutely. I think in our efforts to keep on going and not grant ourselves that latitude to be able to feel our emotions and at least begin to deal with it, we increase the stress.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that there's the two types of stress: the good stress and the bad stress, or stress. But in allowing that to continue, we are pushing ourselves to a point where you hit that pinnacle and then you're going to start to slide down the other side. Your performance is compromised. Your ability to focus, concentrate, function, pretty much goes out the window. For those of us who like control and organization, when we get to that point, we're losing all of that. And that makes it even more uncomfortable for us. Mm-hmm. And grasping and trying to get it back only really makes it worse. So I think we have to be good to ourselves and give ourselves that opportunity that maybe our performance or what we need to accomplish is not going to be perhaps that 100%. I hate to use the word perfection, because that gets us into more trouble, that we would prefer to be. So maybe we have to grant ourselves that latitude where, based on the situation and circumstances, maybe 80% of how we would like to perform and accomplish is the best we can do at that point in time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. And being okay with that, understanding I am under immense stress. My technical and my cognitive skills may decline right now because I'm so overloaded. My creativity may increase because of meaning, right? This means something. So, cognitively, I may have a decline, but creatively, I may be able to write more. I may be able to feel a deeper sense of empathy when I perform, because we can't always cancel performances. We have to learn how the adversity or the loss is working against us. And we have to tune into what is strengthening, right? So one person may become mentally tougher, but vocally tighter, muscle wise. Mm-hmm. How can you leverage that mental toughness? How can you may have to do a little more work in relaxation techniques, because the more self-aware you are, the more you will be able to focus on what is a strength versus what is suffering right now. What is becoming stronger? Of course, somebody that is heartbroken can pour. Have you ever heard someone, I remember when Adele, she had split from someone. I can't remember. I don't keep up with pop culture. I'm not really good at that. But I just remember she was going through a split. And everybody was like, oh, we're about to get a great album, right? Mary J. Blige, when her husband did all this stuff to her, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, everybody was like, yes. We're about to get, now that's a very insensitive way for the public to look at it because this person is heartbroken. But people understand that when a person goes through heartbreak, they're going to write music and sing more relatably. Like, I'll be able to relate to you more. You're in the thick of this, right? So meaning increases. So that creative side of you increases. Now, cognitively, you may not be able to, remember all the words. You may have to, really work at certain things that you don't have to work as hard at normally, but become self-aware enough before something happens so that you understand what I can do better, what is sharpened in me when I go through adversity, and what parts are weakened in me, and be compassionate about the weakened parts because it's okay, especially in high performance individuals, whether it's a singer, a producer, an actress, a CEO. Remember to have self-compassion. It doesn't matter if everybody else is expecting you to be at a certain level. What are you expecting of you while you're going through this? Are you being realistic with how you feel?
Yes. An excellent point. And in our attempts to push through, it's this idea of, I don't have time for this. It's going to have to wait. I need to continue. We can only do that for an unpredictably certain period of time. And then it's going to catch up with us. And the other question that I would ask is, at what cost?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
These are certain things that are really out of our control.
Mm-hmm.
You
Definitely.
don't know when it's going to hit. And you don't know what the repercussions of it personally might be. Is it going to have some sort of a physical impact on you because of all the stress that you've allowed yourself to be under for an undetermined amount of time?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And cognitively, it's like a computer, right? Your brain is a huge it's your computer. It's your central processing unit. That's what your brain is. And just because you don't have a window open or active does not mean it's not running in the background. So what is affecting your cognitive load? All of these things that you're dealing with, they're there. Just because you push them to the back of your mind does not mean those thoughts and memories and emotions are not running on, taking up mental RAM. Mm-hmm. Cognitively, you are overloading yourself when you don't deal with issues. And you attempting to, quote, stay busy, you're just piling more and more onto your cognitive load. And one day you just break down because you have not, you're thinking that because you're not dealing with something or handling something, that it's in the back of my mind. You're not looking at things from a perspective of there is a load and I'm just completely I keep stacking project upon project upon project upon project, trying to run from these windows that are running in the back in your mind. So you're not escaping things just because they may be, in a sense, lying dormant, in a sense. You are just piling things on top. You know, it's like, you know, I am the person that does laundry but does not fold right away. And then I have 72 other things to do every day. So I'm washing a load of laundry, and then I put that nice fresh laundry on the chair, right? And then I put another load of laundry in to wash. Then I have another load of laundry in the dryer, right? So I hear the dryer go off and I check it. Okay, everything's dry. Then I stack that on top of the other load. And then I take the load that's in the wash. This is such a bad habit because I don't, then I'm looking at this. Then I'm looking at this huge pile of laundry. Like, why did I do that? Why didn't I just fold it as it was coming out of the dryer? I could just pause what I was doing, pause what I was reading or writing, and could have just simply folded this. Now the mountain looks insurmountable. It's so much to do now. That is the same thing with all of this stuff that you're piling on top of your hurt, your loss, your adversity, your disappointment, whatever it is. You're just piling stuff on, and one day you're going to have to address that pile. Either you're going to have to take the initiative to address it, or it's just going to say, okay, you're not going to do it. Then grief will say, okay, I'll do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, grief, anger, pain, disappointment, all of those emotions, they will all decide. They'll get together and have a nice little a conference, a meeting about you, and they're all going to pull up to your house one day, unannounced and uninvited.
And what's interesting too in these situations is the fact that we seem like we have to do it alone. What about a support system? Now, I realize that not everybody has a support system or what I would call a good support system, but what is it? Or why do we do this to ourselves? Instead of allowing ourselves maybe to appear vulnerable and allow that wall that we built to come down and have, conversations with members, one or more members of our support system about, how we're feeling and how this is impacting us and other members of the family, the group, depending on the circumstances. It amazes me how many people seem to take the responsibility or the burden on to themselves solely and think that they need to handle it alone.
We've been taught to be strong. We've been engineered to be strong and work your way through it, and that's great. But you have to know when to call in support, when to call in help. I can pick up my keyboard. My keyboard isn't that heavy. I would need help to pick up my couch. Social capital is so powerful, so powerful. And, when I have clients that are dealing with certain types of loss, certain types of adversity, I have them write down 3 or 4 people that they are undoubtedly sure this person loves me. As many people as they can write down, at least one. And I know that there are people out there that may say, I don't even have that though. Someone that would care if they never heard from you again, or if they never saw you again. Well, I don't have that. Okay, talk to a priest. Talk to someone that, and even if it's not your priest, a good priest cares about your soul.
Mhm.
So find someone to talk to, because those are lifelines in your life. And the thing is, a lot of the time, the client will call and not even talk about what they're going through. See, that's not always the need. Sometimes you just need to feel that human connection.
Yeah.
Right? So you may call your therapist and talk to your therapist about what you're actually dealing with. But you may call your friend and talk about how the weather is so wonky. Right?
Yeah.
Those interactions are both equally important, because talking to your therapist, you were able to face head on what you're dealing with. Talking to your friend, you were able to just be a regular human being and talk about something that's completely unrelated. You were able to feel the human connection on a more intimate level than you would with your therapist. That's a more professional level. That's the client practitioner relationship.
Mhm.
But when you talk to your friend and call about the weather, you can say, the sun is shining, but snow's everywhere and it's freezing cold. And yeah, the sun here is shining, but it rained yesterday and it was really weird. And then you start talking about the most unrelated thing, but for some reason it feels good to the soul,
Mhm.
because it's a connection. It's a human connection. So I think that we don't realize the power of that at times.
And as a part of that, sometimes when we are trying to push through the adversity or the grief, we tend to isolate ourselves even more. And our weather here, we had snow last night. This is Florida.
Wow.
And it's freezing. So we are less likely to be outside and in contact with each other the way we normally are. So for the past few days, we've been even more isolated because you don't want to be out in this. And I noticed even in the neighborhood, and assuming that not everybody is dealing with a major level of adversity, you can actually see and to some degree sense the difference in the human connection because of not really being able to be outside.
Definitely.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, bless you.
Oh, cold.
Yeah, that's in Florida. You're not used to that, I grew up in Wisconsin, so I am quite used to cold weather. But I can imagine a person that's not used to that, it would be a lot different. I'm used to hibernating and coming out only when I have to during January. So what are some of your strategies for dealing with needing to perform in the midst of adversity?
Sometimes it has to do with momentum, but carefully, because in trying to initiate or maintain momentum, it becomes far too easy to go through that. I don't have time, for this process because I have to keep going. So that is one strategy when I have deadlines. I have assignments to grade and it has to be done by Tuesday. So, that's something that's pretty much non-negotiable. But for other aspects of it, what I've been trying to do is to sort of set time aside. And I think when we're in the midst of adversity and grief, and we're trying to keep busy, and we don't want to allow ourselves that downtime because we're afraid. We don't want to think. You know, we figure if we keep busy, we can sort of stave things off. But I think in allowing ourselves permission to be able to, you know, just curl up with a book. At times like that, I try and avoid the computer or social media and technology because that becomes too much of a distraction. So if you can, you know, even if you have pets, you know, 4-legged family members, spend time with them. You know, it's more relaxing and you have that connection. It doesn't necessarily have to be with another human. So that is one of my strategies. The other part of it, although I have to admit I'm avoiding it. I'm avoiding playing the piano. Right now, that's not a good idea.
Definitely. I understand. And you have to be okay with that. It doesn't take away from your ability. It doesn't take away from your love for it. It is just a necessary thing at this point. Your loss is immense, and it is okay not to be the normal, high-performing Dr. Marianne Murky right now. You have every right to grieve. You have every right to stop and sit in your grief. You have every right to process the way that only you process, because we are all unique. I think one thing that high-performing individuals try to do when they're grieving and when adversity is coming at them is they try to live up to the tag high-performing individual.
Yes.
They try to be that during their grief, be that during their loss, be that during their adversity. That is not the thing to do. You have every right, as every other human being does, to say, you know what, I'm just Marianne Markey right now. You have developed and worked so hard that you have earned that right. So from a lens of high performing individuals, whenever you're high performing, you have worked very hard to get there. So instead of looking at things through a lens of, I can't be myself right now, and allowing that to add pressure, you tell yourself, I deserve not to be this part of myself right now because I have worked hard and I deserve the right to grieve. Or I deserve the right to recalibrate. I deserve the right to reorganize. Whatever that looks like for you based on your own circumstances. You have the right for that. You have the right for that. Um, I want you to try this strategy, Dr. Markey, and anyone that's listening that's dealing with grief or loss. Dr. Markey, I think this may be the most transparent episode that we will ever record.
Quite possibly.
Yeah. I want you to try something that I look at and I call it the 3-2-3-2 method. And every day you're going to choose 10 minutes, right? And you're going to do 3 minutes of slow, deep breathing that's going to recenter you and relax you physically and mentally. It's going to help you to be mindful and in the moment. And then you're going to take 2 minutes for intentional daily planning. Your intentional daily planning may say from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock, I'm going to sit here and look at the wall. After that, I'm going to work for 2 hours. After that, I'm going to go on a walk. Whatever you can fit into that 2 minutes, because you don't want to overthink it.
Mm-hmm.
You want to give your day somewhat of a map, somewhat of a path. Make sure you include things that feel good to you, that create dopamine and serotonin. I'm going to play with my kitty cat. I'm going to go for a walk. And you don't have to have a time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of map out generically what you're going to do with your day. Then for 3 minutes, I want you to have a journal of gratitude that you can just record in for 3 minutes. The things that you're thankful for, the things that you're grateful for. And then that last 2 minutes, I want you to choose self-affirming statements. But when we talk about affirmation, I want you to internalize what you're saying to yourself every day. That is a great way to start to deal with the grieving process and adversity, and starting to get I don't want to say a grasp on it, because it's so sporadic. Feelings and emotions can kind of spout out at any time. But it gives you somewhat of a framework daily,
Mm-hmm.
and a plan daily. And it's not like, I'm telling you to be rigid and, you got to plan out that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this is a road of self-compassion. It's a road of self-compassion. Compassionate enough to stop and say, I'm hurting. Compassionate enough to stop and say, I don't have to be who I normally am, because this is not my normal life. This is not how things are normally. This is outside of what is normal for me at this time. So having enough self-compassion to reorganize and recalibrate so that you'll get into a mindset where you can refresh.
I like that.
We live in color, emotional beings. From moment to moment, it can change.